So this next panel is about another subject that I really enjoy talking about outside of politics and innovation and solutions, but entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs in action, helping to solve problems is one of my favorite things to hear about. And we've got a couple entrepreneurs that are working on some really cool ideas, and we're going to hear from them. We're going to hear about their challenges, their struggles, and we have Dan Pingaro from Ocean Institute, the CEO of Ocean Institute, who is going to lead this panel. So please join me in welcoming Dan Pingaro.
Up and grab a chair, and Emma, do you mind coming on up and grab a chair? That was fascinating, Nathaniel. That was just amazing on the voting stuff. We're going to move into looking at entrepreneurialism and the environment and that intersection. I'm Dan Pingaro. I'm with the Ocean Institute, and I have two really fabulous entrepreneurs here that come to their business through slightly different routes, and we're going to discuss that today, this afternoon, and allow for opportunity for you to engage with them. First, I'd like to talk about Todd Gasparik here, Vice President at Smart Planet Technologies that creates the re-cup. And this is one of the things you may or may not know, but you'll see all these cups around here today. Your average paper cup is something that doesn't get recycled. It has a plastic coating on it, and it grinds up, or gums up, I should say, the recycling machine. And so therefore, the pulp is not something that can be utilized in the recycling market. Whereas utilizing a mineralized resin, you're able to recycle this paper cup that Recup is creating and allow it to actually be utilized in the secondary market there for recycling, which is tremendous and adds true value to the product itself. So I think that's a huge market opportunity for you in that arena. And we're going to come back to that and the opportunities and how we came to this in just a moment. I'd also like to introduce Emma Rose Cohen from Final Straw. You have an amazing story and background. You took your master's degree, I think, in sustainability, correct?
I did.
And turned that into a business, which is Final Straw. And I don't know if you've heard about it, but she raised $1.8 million on Kickstarter. I mean, that doesn't suck. Or maybe it really does.
Does not suck.
That does not
Straw
suck.
does.
That's a lot of do-re-mi. And with 500 million straws being used every single day in America, there's an opportunity there to change marketplace behavior through Final Straw. So real quick, so that we have a sense of the audience, this poll will not be nearly as scientific as the ones we've been hearing about. I'm curious, how many of you in the audience are entrepreneurs, have a business, have had a business, or thinking about starting your own business? By a show of hands, how many? All right, well I'm going to call that 70%. Yeah, that's pretty scientific right there.
Very scientific.
How many of you in the audience have funded a small business or other businesses, or even a nonprofit that is actually a business in a different manner? How many folks out there have done funding in that? Great. So we're looking at about a third of the audience in that area too. How many folks run a nonprofit at this point in time? Just curious for my own sake. Yeah, right on. Okay, so we kind of have a sense of our audience. Seems like we have a lot of entrepreneurs out there at this time. So we're going to focus a lot in that arena over the next 30 minutes or so, 35 minutes, and give you time to engage as well. So Emma,
Yes,
you went about raising funds, as we just heard, from Kickstarter.
I did.
What in your assessment went really well? What did you learn through that process that really took you by surprise in a really good way? And then as you went through it, maybe there are some lessons to be learned from that as a startup as you were moving forward.
Well, the first big lesson I learned was that there's a lot of straw lovers out there. I really underestimated that going into it. I originally thought about the straw problem, and I was like, okay, the way to solve this is to just not use straws. Boom, done. That will get rid of them. But it turns out that that is not a very realistic way to go about it, because there are people out there who love their straws. They're straw fanatics, and they're also my customers. And so trying to completely rip that part of their beverage experience away from them is not the way to enact change. And instead, what we're trying to do is empower consumers with tools that they can use to reduce their consumption on a daily basis. So I think reframing the problem and the solutions for me was really where the aha moment was, and still thinking about ways to give people the experience that they want, but doing so in a sustainable manner.
And so as you went through that process with Kickstarter, because some of these folks are just now thinking about their own business,
Yeah.
would you suggest that's a good way of raising funds for the business, or what did you learn out of that in terms of liabilities for yourself?
Yeah.
That
So,
you had a legacy of that.
Absolutely. So Kickstarter is totally a double-edged sword. I mean, it is the reason I have a company today, and so therefore I'm incredibly thankful for the platform. The problem with Kickstarter is that there are companies out there overseas that are watching it, looking for successful products, and then immediately go to manufacture and knock off those products. So if you go online today and type in Final Straw, you'll see our amazing product, but you'll also see a lot of knockoffs, which is really unfortunate because the entire purpose of the product is to reduce waste. And these knockoffs are very low quality, questionable manufacturing processes. Who knows what kind of, materials are in there, if there's lead, phthalates, and all kinds of other nasty stuff. And so ultimately, we get all these complaints from customers saying, I bought your straw and it's terrible and it's a piece of junk and I'm just gonna throw it away. And we're like, that's a knockoff. So there's a lot of confusion around it, and as we're kind of creating this new segment of the market in these kind of different reusables, it's tarnishing the brand name, which is very tough because we want every customer to be happy, and we want every customer to say like, wow, Final Straw really is trying to do something different. And these knockoffs, they use our marketing material, they use photos of me, they use our videos, and so it's very confusing for consumers. I mean, they will buy domains like Final Straw with 2 W's and then just copy our website. So that is the bad side of Kickstarter. The good, I think, really outweighs it though, because if it weren't for Kickstarter, we wouldn't have a company, we wouldn't have really shown that these products are hitting a vein. And I think that is the most important thing that we did. And now we've got these wave of Kickstarters kind of coming after ours with these other reusables, with other straw alternatives. And it's amazing. It's so cool to see the innovation that is sparked because our project had the notoriety that it did.
So we're touch base on the barrier to entry for other companies that come into your space. And just before I get to Todd, I want to follow up with one question there, which would be and I lost my train of thought actually on that. I'm so sorry, I have to look at my notes on this. How did you quantify the marketplace when you were thinking about the Kickstarter campaign? Or did that itself actually happen through the campaign? Or was that something you did in your master's thesis?
So many people before we launched the Kickstarter were like, you guys need to do a market analysis, find out who your customer is. And I'm like, isn't that the point of the Kickstarter? So we didn't really do any of that research. It kind of, for me, I like to just throw wet noodles at the wall till I see what sticks. And, by launching the Kickstarter, we found our audience and we found our community. And I think that was, one of the other really surprising things is, I always have known that I'm a crazy fanatic about plastic and all of these, tiny little things. But what I realized is that there's a lot of people out there like that. And this community is incredibly supportive, incredibly thoughtful, and really yearning for information and connection. And that's really what we're trying to continue to facilitate. It's not just obviously a product, but a space where people can be sharing about other products and other ideas and other things that they're using, because it's not just about our straw, it's about all the other things out there that people are doing to reduce their environmental impact.
Todd, you've come to your place now in a much different avenue than Emma did. Yep. Emma's working directly with consumers in many instances here. You're working business to business in many ways. And you came about growing your company through a different avenue. Could you tell us a little bit about that experience, which markedly different?
So our experience was totally different. We didn't have any windfall of money or awareness that jumped out because of an online situation. We were a grassroots, let's start today with an idea, let's bring it to our friends and family, let's go to the people around us that we think care, let's attend an event, or let's go to a trade show and pay money out of our pockets that we don't have. Let's go through the process of saying, hey, Uncle Dave, I know you care about the earth, so hey, we're doing this thing, and can you give me $10,000 because we're going to try and make a run at this. And oh, by the way, I think we're 30 days away from solving the problem. And that was 11 or 12 years ago, I think, and Uncle Dave is no longer with us. the point I make, the point I make
You have
is,
to pay him back.
yeah, there's no payback on that one. No, I'm joking, and there's no Uncle Dave. That was no. The point I make is that we found ourselves in a situation where we were very much ahead of ourselves. We started with a product that was engineered to solve a problem that maybe didn't exist in the eyes or in the minds of consumers, right? There wasn't 10 years ago this huge demand, whether it be straws or recyclability or plastic reduction or ocean awareness, other than maybe this community. And I could point out at some of the people that have been in this space for a long, long time that I've had the pleasure of getting to know over the years. But to the consumers, which are really the ones that are driving policy, as our previous speaker was mentioning, it was well put, Nathan, they're the ones who push. And so now is the time. We've never been more popular. So it's been a longer road. We're very much self-funded. We've found ourselves some angels along the way. We've found ourselves some institutional monies. And now we're finally, after this period of time, finding royalties from the business model that we built starting to come in, which are now making us, I guess, cash flow positive would be the word I would use, which is a positive.
And how did you quantify the marketplace before you went down this path of creating this new product? Was there any formal research done in that arena?
That's a terrible question.
Okay.
That's a terrible question. We didn't. We didn't go at this for the environment. We went at this for a way of using smarter materials with an environmental impact being a part of the equation, right? It was a byproduct of what we were doing. So we were trying to do things smarter with an environmental idea, but we also wanted to make money. We also wanted to improve performance. We also wanted to increase available, raw materials and use them to make an end game that was better suited for the environment, the economics, and the performance, which are the three pillars of any, I think, good business. So we struggled because we didn't enter in with a real game plan. We found ourselves our sweet spot and quickly realized that by going after the marketplace with the people that care about the environment, we could target them. The people who care about that, though, also care very much about the bottom line. They want that price to be the same or less. And so despite how everyone wants to go green, does anyone want to pay more? Probably not. Now, those times have started to change. We've started to see a little bit of shift because demand for environmental, whether it be a mandate or whether it be just a general desire because of peer pressure or because of just love for the environment because the awareness has gone so far up, is starting to change the game for us. So exciting times ahead, I hope.
As you're working in the marketplace, from business to business, if you will, what have you been able to put in place at this point in time, 10, 11 years down the road, that really creates a barrier to entry to other people coming into that space? Or do you see that it's more, I'll let you answer it right there and I'll follow it up.
Yeah. I think barrier to entry with anything is really about timing. That's the most important fundamental metric for a business as a startup. You'd ask a room and most people would say it's got to do with funding. But the most important thing is timing, because if timing's not right for an audience, whether it be the general consumer or the business or the retailer or whoever you're targeting, if timing's not right for them to meet an objective or an initiative and they don't have a push or a pull coming from whatever direction it needs to come from to move them in that direction, it's a much longer road. So barrier to entry, timing. Well, that's on our side right now because the environment is at the forefront. Like I said, we've been a lot more popular as of recent because of the mandates, because of the demand, the raised awareness in consumer and media and what have you for smarter use of materials and better products.
And we touched on this on our call quite a bit because, if we had launched our Kickstarter 6 months earlier, it would have been crickets. But we just got so lucky. And so, I think I attribute a lot of our success to that luck and to the timing and to, the public awareness really shifting and choosing straws as the, poster child, because it could have been anything. Why not zip ties? But it was straws. So lucky me.
Yeah, great point.
So Emma, there's been a lot in the news about Final Straw and similar products, and some of it comes from a negative angle, and sometimes it's very positive. What's your response for those that haven't seen some of your comments earlier about this, given your price point in the marketplace, and how that may or may not allow you to be adopted by so many individuals, reducing the amount of 500 million straws a day? How do you address that issue at $25, I believe it is, retail?
Totally. Well, first to just address the 500 million, that stat is somewhat debated. So I would just say if it's 100 million or 500 million, does it really matter? It's too many. So it's probably more. I mean, either, regardless of which side of that argument you want to be on and say Milo Crest, whatever, it's too many. So that's, I just have to say that. And then, so, Final Straw is a price point of $24.50, and, it's a pretty fun product to use. And we have gotten some feedback on the price point being too high. We are a startup, and when you are first starting a run of a product, you're going to have to deal with higher costs. As numbers go up, you can increase efficiencies in the factories, and we're also looking at our product and minimizing the higher cost things. So we're coming out with a version 2 in a few months that's going to be a price point of $16.50, which is super exciting because ultimately we want this to be a product that is accessible to anyone that wants to carry a straw with them. That being said, there are cheaper alternatives out there. You can carry a stainless steel straw in a little bag. It's going to poke you in the pocket, but at least you'll be able to use it and without using a single-use plastic one. So, the line is backed with a lifetime guarantee because we really are trying to solve a problem. And if we just put more products out there that are junk, that are going to break in a couple of years, then we're not solving the problem because this has a higher environmental impact than a single-use plastic straw. You have to reuse it many, many times to hit that break-even point. So that's why we cycle test this silicone piece for 2 uses a day for 15 years. And we just are continuing to improve upon the model because in sustainability, there's always a trade-off. There's always going to say, well, this could be worse than this, and there aren't the clearest, easiest answers. But ultimately, what we are trying to do is drive consumer behavior towards awareness around single-use items so that they're starting with the straw, but then it moves to a fork, and then it moves to go container, and then maybe they're biking to work, and then they're flying less, and all of these things that build and build and build until we're all kind of on this similar idea of what living a sustainable lifestyle means. Because obviously eliminating straws is not enough. It's a very small place to start, but it's a great place to start because it's all relatable to every single one of us who's ever been served a straw in our drink. Non-consensual plastic.
Yeah.
So
Well said.
Well said.
And Durant.
So a lot of us in the audience have started businesses, have businesses. Not everyone can do a life cycle analysis. Not even the largest corporations can do that with all of their products. And you want to ensure that there's an opportunity for that product to have over the life of the product, less of an impact than what it's replacing. Todd, can you explain to us a little bit about that mineralized resin and the life cycle of this cup versus a regular cup and what the impact may or may not be and what kind of difficulty you may have had getting that into the marketplace because of the difference?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, does anyone think paper cups are recyclable? It's amazing how the show of hands has gone. There's a few still, right? We still got a few. It's just paper, should be fine. The problem is you've got a paper cup that's got that plastic lining on it. I think recently we've seen in the news, we've seen the stories, we've seen the various people on the stage like me saying, hey, it's not, it's not. The reality is that a paper cup made with a plastic liner is just too difficult for the paper recyclers to deal with using their conventional equipment. There's a lot of people that are going around trying to figure out a solution for this, and a couple of the solutions you're well versed with. Some people are switching to compostable. Some people are going over here and building infrastructure, and they're trying to build machines that can deal with a material that's really a hard thing to deal with. You're talking about plastic particles that are light, flaky particles that clog screens in the recycling equipment. So picture a big blender, and I won't bore you with too many details, but a big blender. Throw a bunch of paper in it, or paper cups from your local Starbucks or your local coffee shop, and all of a sudden now you're going to have all this churn, blades spinning, and fiber is going to naturally separate from the plastic. The fiber is lighter than water, so it floats to the top. And the plastic particles, kind of the equivalent of ripping up like a Ziploc bag. You could rip it apart if you put enough pressure to it, but it would be these light, flaky, strong plastic flakes that would also be lighter than water and float to the top. And then they would go into the screening system that would be onto the secondary cleaners, and that's where the clogging takes place. That's where those plastic particles clog the screens and prevent the fibers from passing through the system. So as a result, the fibers aren't being collected, and as a result, it's too much of a time constraint, too much of a cost associated with processing those materials. So as a result, we turn over 50 billion paper cups get diverted to the landfill. Over 700,000 tons of material, and that's the US annually. The numbers around the globe are much more extreme. What we've done is mineralize the plastic. We've just taken a calcium carbonate, which is a mineral that you'd find in the earth, 12% of the earth's crust, or I think those numbers have switched. But now there's a sustainability element where you can actually grow calcium, and you can do some other things to get a renewable source of that. And we're blending that into the resin at a rate of 51%. The 51% coating now gets applied to the paper, and you make a cup that looks the same, performs the same, and actually costs the same as a regular paper cup. The two major differences are that you've got a cup with less plastic, so you get an immediate reduction of plastic, which is, I think, a nice advancement, right? Even if we just stop there, that's a big movement in the right direction. But more importantly, these are really, really easy for conventional paper recyclers to process through their equipment. So instead of going through all the processes of reinventing the wheel or building new equipment and getting expensive infrastructure, we just switch the materials. And by doing that now, recyclers have a valuable and easy material to process through their conventional equipment.
Very cool.
Sorry for the long-winded explanation. It's not just cups, I'll mention, right? Anything that's plastic coated applies. Food trays, folding cartons, corrugated wax cartons. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Anything you can imagine that's a paper product with a plastic coating would benefit from having a mineralized resin being used.
Absolutely. So I see the time. We have a little over 10 minutes. I also want to make sure we get some audience questions, but I do have a few more follow-up questions for each of you. And since we don't have all afternoon, we're just going to kind of cut to the chase, 1-2 on this. Final straw, that's really cool. You're coming out with a less costly version real soon. What do you see as you look to the future for Final Straw? What other products might we see, or how might you be looking to change behaviors going forward in your consumer?
So excited to talk about it. So, I'm not even a straw user. So creating this product was really weird for me because all my friends were like, "Don't you hate straws?" And I was like, "I do, but also this is so cool." So ultimately, the dream is to create an entire line of foreverables, which is a new category of items that are designed to last forever and backed with lifetime guarantees. So we're prototyping a fork. It's going to be so cool. And also working on a to-go container and a smoothie straw or boba straw, which is surprisingly popular. We get requests every day for boba. So yeah, and then beyond those items, it really is about integrating those reusables into larger systems and normalizing that. So it's not weird when you have your straw on your keychain and you're walking around. It is the new normal. And I think that we are moving there at a rapid rate. And it is shocking to see how many people are, they don't just buy one straw, they buy 3, and then they give 2 to their friends, because it really is about spreading the movement to all of your friends, family, kids, and whoever.
Right. Fabulous. And as you look to the future, you have a lot of different product opportunities out there. As you were just alluding to, where do you see your entity going, especially with the mineralized resin as what would appear to be a base in so many different products?
I think as a core technology, we've got a really neat thing on our hands. We want to make it available to the world, right? We want to share, just like you want to move straws and divert from single use. We want to do the same. We want to make smarter use of materials. I just wanted to add to what you're doing, which is so brilliant, is remember, guys, the hierarchy of end of life for products is really important to remember. It's reduce, reuse, recycle. So while I'm in the space of disposables, reducing at all costs and reusing at all costs first comes as a natural progression. We realize, practically speaking, we're all going to be on the run and need a disposable cup, or we're going to be at a conference that we need to use a material. So the reduce, reuse, recycle lines up perfectly with, which is why I was so excited to speak with you, and have this opportunity. I just wanted to give you that shout out, or whatever that's worth. But for me, what's really interesting is timing, like I mentioned. And I don't know if anyone knows about the Starbucks challenge. Has anyone heard about the Next Gen challenge, right? Timing is great. They are looking for the next best thing. They want to find a recyclable and compostable solution. And if you look at it, they're a marketing machine. They are great at making consumers believe that they've got the top 12 of 500 submissions and all these amazing things. And whether that comes to fruition or not, I don't know. That'll be a work in progress. But what I love about that, if you look through the other side of that lens and not just look at what the solution is, they're validating the fact that cups today are not being recycled. Because if they were, they wouldn't be looking for a solution. And I love that, because to me, having done this for a really long time, my goal is to educate people about what the reality is of what's going on. There's a huge amount of misinformation. And so for me, what I hope for the future, Dan, whether it be a product or an application that you have in mind, paper, cups, folding cartons, food grade, like I said, that's one side of it. The other side is the education, and educating people to realize that plastic-coated paper is really hard for paper recyclers to deal with, so it gets diverted to the landfill. If we switch to a smarter use of material, we can solve a big part of that problem. And I get asked the question all the time, well, who's collecting it? And I say it's a chicken and the egg. This is not a silver bullet. It's got to start somewhere. And that incremental step of making smarter use of materials affords us to build the infrastructure and educate the people so they have something to collect. Because I can't go to the recyclers and say, look at this great solution, even though I learned the lesson. Because what they say is, oh, that's amazing. We process it, it pulps, it's great. Where do we collect it from? And then I don't have users. So I'm out there trying to champion the message to make use of the materials so that the recyclers who are educated about this have something to collect. And that's a huge leap forward.
And so do you work much with the recyclers about their audience, their consumers, where they can then go sell what has been collected and pulped? How do you work with that component?
So everyone knows the story about China. They don't want our waste. It's because they're tired of getting materials sent to them that are not valuable or easy to recycle. So we address that very problem. I can put 100% paper cup product into a bale it up, and I can sell it as uncoated paper because of how easy it processes through the conventional equipment. So we have that potential to solve that whole problem. Are we there yet? Absolutely not. This is just a part of the equation. This is a piece of the puzzle. This is not a silver bullet, as I said.
Wow. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Just out of curiosity, we just came out of lunch about an hour or so ago, and looking around at the tables, I was seeing that some people had brought their own utensils, straws, cups. Just by a show of hands, I'm curious, again, another very unscientific poll, how many people brought their own cutlery to today's event? All right, so maybe 25, 30% or so. Yeah. So there's definitely opportunity there for both of your products, and specifically Final Straw.
Final Fork.
Final Fork.
Final Fork. Okay, I like that. The alliteration is really good there. That's
Fork
fabulous.
responsibly.
I like that. Excellent.
We have a little bit of fun at Final.
I like that. Excellent. Well, before we wrap up, and I do have a few other announcements to make here, I just want to throw this out to the audience. Does anybody out there, as an entrepreneur or someone thinking about it, have some questions for our entrepreneurs up here who have come to their businesses in two different manners, but are really driving forward in a really positive way, in a sustainable manner? Is there any questions from our audience? Yeah, back there.
Todd, following up to what you said about how that work is different today, but that would be a big problem, right?
Huge problem. Smart Planet, my company, we're a material engineering company. We're not, I haven't solved the whole problem. I've started with the first step, which is let's make materials that are easy and valuable to process. To your point, though, we've thought through that because it's it's a big part of the conversation. And what we've come up with is there's a phased approach. Phase one, let's start making use of these in settings like this, where you'll notice there's a collection bin out there. I can close the loop, and I can start the discussion and at least educate a few people about that. Phase two, I could put a marker on here. I could put some sort of QR code and gamify it so that if you scan your cup that has a little QR code, it tells you where it should go, or is it recyclable, or is it not, and maybe win a prize or what have you for changing consumer behavior. We would reward that. And phase three, which is probably the tipping point that we all strive for, and I get asked a lot, well, let's get all the paper mills. There's only 5 major mills making cup stock in the US. Why don't they just all switch over? Now, I've licensed them early in my career. If you would believe that, you probably wouldn't, but I have. They didn't do it because they were being proactive. They were doing it more reactive because we had a few big customers that were pulling them through. I think we're on our way to phase two. I think we're doing a lot of closed-loop collections. Last year, we were making 30,000 cups a year. This year, we're on track to make 200 million. Just to put it in perspective about how much of a hockey stick we've seen. And now the phased approach to give the recyclers the ability to go collect is teaching them about the value of the material itself. So phase one, close the loop. Phase two, a marker so that you can scan it as a consumer and know where that needs to go and hopefully build infrastructure out. And then phase three is the tipping point where we get the mills who are making the materials so that all cups are made with products that are using the mineralized resin as opposed to the neat polyolefin, which is a legacy product, looking through the lens of the environment.
We have a question over here. Yeah, go ahead.
But I would think too, to taste
Yeah.
is that. So
You're dead on. I mean, that's a point that I'm not a policymaker. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm an activist at heart, a hobbyist at best, right? We're here for the purpose of educating people that there are materials that can be used in support of these initiatives. I think the big point that I struggle with is just that, right? I've created a material, and now I have to get it into the hands of the people like yourselves who are doing those pieces of the puzzle, right? Getting the support, whether it's a stick with the mandates and helping us to curb consumer behavior, or just the invitation. here in the room, like, what if we all just started using paper cups that are made with smarter materials? That's a start.
Stadiums.
Closing the loop in stadiums. We've signed some airlines. Yeah, you're right on track. Yeah, great question.
Do we have any other? Right over here. We have one more question here.
Along these lines, how do you balance everything?
I'll keep this short. We are a material engineering company that has the intellectual property built in. We're very backed by science and data. And then on top of that, we've got a very big portfolio of intellectual property. It's not to gain market share, it's to make sure we can get that out to all. So we don't want one manufacturer taking it and then using it to gain market share and carve everybody out, because that would be we'd be fighting Mother Nature at that point. So for us, we put our technology into the hands of manufacturers around the world, and they do the work for us. We've got some distributors here. 4 Blue Waves is here. They're one of our distributors. They're out there selling products all day long, which is great. And every time they sell it, they champion our brand. We have ambassadors that would work through that mindset. So I'm guessing you do something the same, or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's like there's a difference between an idea and the execution, and there's now a lot of reusable straws out there in a case that you can carry with you. Why is Final Straw the most popular? I mean, it's a marketing play. We tell the story, we have the voice, and people are connecting with our brand because it isn't just about the product. It's about, we are also like working with NGOs. We are really trying to walk our talk and be transparent and be the company that we want to see more of in the world. Additionally, bring it on. Bring on all the companies that are like doing the same thing as us, because it just will push us to function at a higher level. We are so inclusive of any type of reusable straw, whatever your fancy is. Please use that instead of plastic. We don't care, or don't use a straw at all. Like, do your part, whatever it is. But I think the more brands and companies that continue to enter the space, the more it's going to push me to innovate and push my brand harder. And so it's great. I love it. I love the competition and friendly competition as well. And I always reach out to the other CEOs and business founders, because I think that there's a ton of opportunity to work together and do cross promotions, and a lot of it isn't competition. We have similar customers who are looking for all of these different alternatives, and we can really work together to spread the message.
Right here. We have another question.
Yeah, how do you both feel about compostable items? Because Nordstrom carries compostable straws.
Yeah.
And there are compostable coffee cups and containers.
I mean, in one word, BS. I think that my problem with compostables is really about the moral licensing effect, which is a fancy way of saying that it makes us feel warm and fuzzy inside, and so we use more. Ultimately, most municipalities don't have composting facilities. And it just creates so much confusion around consumers. Like, if I had a nickel for every time someone's like, it's okay, it's compostable, and I just want to be like, because, okay, is it going to a compost? Okay, do you guys have a industrial composting facility? Is it biodegradable? What does that actually mean? And there's just so many things that we're trying to teach consumers right now that adding in this extra level is really difficult. That being said, in places like San Francisco where they have, curbside composting, it's a different story. So it really kind of depends on the place. But ultimately, I kind of, the triangle, I go like, reduce, reuse, recycling. Like, that's kind of, I really try and keep it at those top ones, because as soon as we introduce recycling, we still get that moral licensing effect. So they did this amazing study where they had 2 groups of people in 2 different rooms, and they were told them they were testing scissors. So the people in one room only had a trash can, and in the other room they had a trash can and a recycling bin. And the people in the room with the recycling bin testing the scissors used 30% more paper. So why is that? It's because we feel better about consumption around recycling. And I would say the same goes true for composting. When you feel like the material is inert and you're not having a negative impact on the earth, you feel better about using it. And so, my mission is to spread the reduce, reuse. And then luckily we've got people doing, the other work, which is making smarter materials that can have better end of life processes.
Yeah, and for me, it's a great question, because composting for me is about putting something into the ground after a single use. It's very linear in nature, right? And for me, I believe in the circular economy, which means let's reuse, right? Let's try and make materials work to their greatest good. So if you look at the end of life, why would I drink a cup of coffee, throw it away, bury it, and never to be used again, when I can reuse the fiber that this cup is made of 7 times over by recycling it? And so by our technology using the coating that we've talked about, I can reuse that fiber 7 times over. I can make it into a piece of paper. I can make it into a moving box, a paper core, a molded pulp tray, a tissue paper. I can go on and on and on. That life, that 7 times over, is really, really a more valuable use for this. Now, you mentioned the industrial compost. We don't have the infrastructure. That's certainly the case. But let's pretend I could snap my fingers and have this turn into one of 2 things, a piece of paper or some dirt. I would think that we'd want to turn it into a piece of paper that I can then snap my fingers again and turn it into the next thing and the next thing, because it's a better use of material. So composting is amazing for organic material. But when it comes to packaging, I think there's a better use, a smarter use for it. Amen.
I see. All right, well, before we finish up here, I do want to make a couple quick announcements. So you all heard that I'm at Ocean Institute. I'm the CEO over there. We get about 100,000 plus guests every year coming through our facility. Almost every single one of those individuals utilizes some form of cutlery or a cup or something like that. The average stay, by the way, of a person on our property is 8 hours. So it's quite an immersive experience for most folks there. And in working with both Emma and Todd here, and getting to know your products a lot more. Emma, you were talking about NGOs a few moments ago, and we're really excited to work with you and provide final straw to some of the folks who are coming to our special events at Ocean Institute so that they will have an actual product in hand that would be a change for them. And also, when it comes to Recup, with our 100,000 individuals, Ocean Institute is making a pledge to move forward utilizing Recup products for all of our guests going at Ocean Institute.
Thank you.
And we're going to go another step beyond that and work with all of our vendors, because you heard Kurt Bjorkman earlier from the ranch talk about how he works with his vendors. We're going to be asking the same of our vendors, because we rent out our facilities. So we'll be doing that too. So after 40 years, we're going to be walking the walk. I've only been there just shy of 2 years, but we are making changes there, and we're going to be helping the planet and our bottom line as an organization and be a showcase for both of your products as well.
Thanks very much for that.
Thank you both.
Just so you know, that means a huge amount. At least speaking, it warms my heart. Having groups like yourself take our technology and use it is a huge step forward. I mean, for us, getting incremental change is a huge impact. You have no idea what that means. So I truly, genuinely mean thank you.
You're welcome. And
I'm going to give you a third round of applause.
I'm really excited to work with both of you. I know it's going to mean a lot to all of the guests that come to Ocean Institute, all of the students that are there, and the businesses that we work with. I think both of you are going to stick around here for a little bit while longer. So if you have other questions you'd like to ask them offline, not on the dais, feel free to come up to both Emma and Todd. Thank you for your attention. Vipe, you can quit dancing and come on up. It's all you now, man.
Thank you.
No, you guys are good. I love hearing this conversation. And, you know, look, this is only the second year of the summit. And what's exciting for me is to hear the conversations from panelists and moderators and people in the audience turn into action. You know, Todd was at the summit last year, and he met a couple of the guys, and they started a distribution company for Blue Waves.
Blue Waves, yeah.
For Blue Waves.
Yep.
So that's something that came out of it. It's a program that's growing. It's helping Todd's company grow, but we're introducing these products into the community. I know Emma is going to receive some of that support as well through Kurt and with Dan and everything too. And that's what we want. This is what radical collaboration looks like. When people get together and they talk, they share ideas and innovations, and this is how we take the first step. There are many more steps we have to take, but it's exciting to see this collaboration take place. Your commitment as well, Dan, thank you so much. And look, next year when you guys come back, I want to hear how it's grown and how other people have gotten involved. So thank you guys again.
Awesome.
Entrepreneurs
Thank you.
in Action right here. Thank you.
Emma, this is yours.
Oh, thank you.
And also, we've got to talk about getting it in the store at a while.